right, so I think we
Okay,
are
wow.
streaming
All
now.
right, we're live. Cool.
Yes.
Hi, everybody.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. And welcome to our jury panel discussion for the 2022 Radda Rise International String Competition. And I'm really excited to talk about a wide range of topics like the competition itself, preparation strategies for competing, repertoire, career development, and how to start a personal brand too. So I'm Michelle Shadowski. I'm the founder of Radda and the director of this competition. And today I have the pleasure of introducing our three wonderful jurors, violinist Giora Schmidt, cellist John-Henry Crawford, and violinist Elizabeth Faidley. So before we jump into the discussion, I'll let everybody introduce themselves a little bit and give some insight to their backgrounds. So who wants to start off first?
Ladies first.
I will start because I have known Michelle and her enterprises and endeavors for a little while and admire her as a wonderful entrepreneur and just a really, really bright person who's trying to always give more opportunities and more positive feedback and reinforcement to students. And she's tried so hard to model her wonderful competitions, which there are for violin and now for piano and now for strings, after a unique concept, which in the feedback last year, which was so cool, I gave videos to every single student. And I thought that was a really, really neat idea. And it was her idea and it was optional, but I was like, yes, because it was so much more genuine. I took so much more time with each applicant. I was able to go through, listen to each one, and then talk to them. You know, I said, "Hi, Lily, I'm Elizabeth," and then I talked and I explained and I blathered. But I thought that was a wonderful way of connecting as an adjudicator to make it a little bit more friendly and for them to hopefully learn in a different way from someone who's hopefully supporting everything that their own teacher is already saying. So just having said that about Michelle, I think she's an amazing musician and businesswoman for us to have. And I'm so happy to be joined by my wonderful colleagues, Giora and John-Henry this year. It's going to be really amazing. I'm Elizabeth. I am faculty at Manhattan School of Music, and I have a large pre-college studio. I have about 65 students right now, about 40 to, I would say 45 to 50 of them are teenagers from 8th to 12th grade. And then I have a couple new ones this year who are little. I haven't had the littles in a while, but I'm really, really enjoying them as they bring a different spark of joy. And I pretty much my whole life is teaching and my daughter, and I enjoy also teaching pedagogy and talking with other teachers and learning about teaching ways. And I've had several pedagogy seminars and some books and things like that. And those have been really, really wonderful too. So I love being a part of this because of those reasons, that Michelle has made it so interesting and that I get to kind of teach while we get to tell everyone how wonderfully they are doing. John-Henry?
Yeah, John-Henry.
It's hard to follow that. But my name is John-Henry Crawford. I'm from Shreveport, Louisiana, where I currently am. And I usually live in New York, but I'm home for some concerts. And just a little bit about me. I started my mother's Suzuki program when I was 5 years old, playing a foam cello. And my dad still likes to joke that's the best I ever sounded, because it's silent. But because of that, I have a huge respect and a huge sort of a mentality that's centered around developing young performers. And I like to teach. I like to teach young people who are kind of just in the cusp of their formative years, because I think that there's so much to offer them. And I've always been sort of immersed in the Suzuki culture. And so it's fun to get back in any way I can. So I'm really excited to be here, and thank you for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, and Giora.
Thank you. To sort of follow up on what Elizabeth and John-Henry said. It's a pleasure for me to be involved in this. I've been teaching for almost as long as I've been playing professionally, which is about 20 years now. And it's really become kind of a cornerstone in my musical life. I get the same amount of pleasure that I do from playing a great Tchaikovsky concerto as I do if I offer a student a great bowing and fingering in the Tchaikovsky concerto that they can then fly with on their own. And so for me now, at this point in my career, I really kind of value kind of offering guidance to the next generation in whatever capacity that means. That means not just what they do with their instrument, but also what it means to become a 21st century musician and how to have music be a part of their lives in the complete sense, whether it be social media, whether it be branding, whether it be also how to play in tune with a nice sound, which goes a long way. So all of those things. So when I see a kind of a bootstrapped operation like this that is really trying to do good for all the right reasons, I'm happy to be a part of it.
Hey, thank you all so much again for being here. And I'm, like I said before, I'm really, really excited to get this going. So now I'm going to go into a little bit about the competition. Elizabeth described some of the features of it already, like the Radda reviews that everybody will receive before the judging round. And then they'll have the opportunity to resubmit recordings after getting that feedback for the judges. And then also, like Elizabeth mentioned, detailed feedback from each one of the jurors at the end of the competition. And some new features that we've added this time are biographies for everybody. So you can either choose to have a full custom biography written for you based on like a survey that you'll fill out, or we'll revise your current biographies. And then finally, as if that weren't enough features already built in, people can also opt in for live private lessons, fully built custom websites as they get started in their careers, and then also training sessions to learn how to start developing a brand and an online presence. So now let's hop into our discussion. So I'd love to hear from everybody what your experiences with competitions are, both competing and adjudicating them, and then also what you think the importance is for competing for young musicians. So who wants to kick us off?
I'll start. Oh, go ahead, please.
Well, I will say just a very short thing, and then you two can take this one over. I know, I'm sure that John-Henry and Giora have a lot to offer from the perspective of being the performer. The competitions for me as a teacher with my students they're not really about winning, which sounds very cheesy and kind of dumb, but it's really real. Every single time they do a competition or they have a really great goal, they grow a lot. It's sort of like if the progress is like, you know, going up like this, all of a sudden you give them a goal and it's like, whoop, like that. And so it's really a wonderful experience to have something like this in the future and to be telling the child or the student, hey, this is coming up in 3 months, let's get blank ready. And so I had a girl this month, at the beginning of the month, she just turning 7, and I gave her Kabalevsky concerto because she wanted to do this audition that's at the end of the month, and I secretly kept her other piece on the back burner in case it didn't make it. But by golly, today she recorded the Kabalevsky concerto at not quite 7 years old, and she got so much better just from kind of having that goal. I don't know what the outcome will be. I don't really care. I just care that during that time she suddenly got her intonation grew a lot. Her ear kind of turned on. She started listening to her sound because she kind of had to. We learned a whole bunch of new technical things that go with Kabalevsky, and she did it so fast. So it was like her progress was like woo, like that. So I think Radda is great, and competition in general, they're more on the friendly side for kids 18 and under, because they spur learning so quickly.
I
Go
agree with
ahead.
that. I think John, go ahead, because I think you.
No.
I'll just add to that very briefly. I think that exactly. I think the goal aspect of it is huge. I think I was actually communicating with a student of mine today, kind of as an anecdote to this, for orchestra seating auditions. And they had orchestra seating auditions yesterday at NYU, and I asked him, well, how'd you play? And he said, well, I was really nervous for the first time. And I noticed what happens to me when I'm nervous. And I said, right there, brother, is the holy grail of learning while you're doing this. Not winning the competition or getting the concertmaster chair. It's learning what happens to you while that's going on. Do you rush when you get nervous? Do you play sharp when you get nervous? Do you start to crunch when you get nervous? Do you get a memory slip when you get nervous? All of these things are part of the self-awareness and the self-growth and the self-discovery that I think competitions like this and so many others, but especially like Liz was saying, in this age bracket, it's kind of it can be your friendly neighborhood competition. You know, we're not throwing you in a jail cell and forcing you to learn something without any communication, you know, like they do in some of those big ones in Europe. You know, this is a little bit more homespun, but in the best sense of the word. So I think that for me, and I did very few competitions actually. I always had teachers. I always had teachers that told me to sort of find goals otherwise. Anyway, but that's my take on it, John.
No, that's all great things that you all have said. I definitely am one of those who has been on the not on the other, I guess on the other side of the juror table a lot more than I've been behind the juror table. So I've judged, you know, a handful of competitions, but I've done a lot more than I maybe even care to admit as a competitor. And so that's I sort of got addicted to them in a little bit of a way. And it just like Elizabeth said, it wasn't to try to win. It wasn't necessarily to get the prize or to get, you know, whatever concerts came as a result or the medal. It was more about having a goal, having a deadline for learning a piece or getting a program ready. But there were a lot of also side components that came with that, like getting juror feedback. And some competitions I did that were kind of in the middle of nowhere, but there was one juror that I really wanted to play for. I thought, well, this would be a great chance for me to meet him or her, and I'm really curious to get their insights. And so, you know, the competition, however it turned out, it didn't matter because I was able to meet them, get to know them a little bit, and maybe even have some lessons with them afterwards. So that's one really beneficial element of it, is that you get to meet a lot. You know, each competition you do, you're going to get 3 to 6 or more really experienced teachers or performers who you can learn from and get their cheat codes, so to speak. But then one added component, which I don't know if it's necessarily going to be the case for this competition, but you know, just for people listening for the future, another really great thing about it is you learn a lot from your peers. And I remember doing some competitions where I would go and listen to some of the other rounds, and I was always a little bit hesitant to do that because, you know, you don't want to psych yourself out before you play. But I learned so much from listening to some of the other performers that I was able to take that and a day or two later, you know, sort of be a little more imaginative in what I was doing in my playing. And so you can learn so much just from listening to your peers, to your fellow musicians who are also competing, and kind of treat it as sort of a festival, a sort of, you know, it's not just, we're not here to compete, we're here all to learn and to grow as musicians.
So that's, can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
It's so interesting that John-Henry just said that, and about the watching others. When I went with Ellie to that competition in North Carolina this past November, it was her first big live one. A violinist who was a finalist after she played walked on the stage, and Ellie whispered to me, "Oh, she's going to be really good," but she hadn't played. And I said, why? And she was like, look how she's walking. Like, she knows she's good. And I was like, oh, and then she played and she was great. And so, but I thought it was interesting that even the, an 11-year-old is picking up like, oh, that person walks with like confidence. And, someone else, a cellist walked out and was kind of like, sheepishly sliding onto the stage, and she was like, ah. And I was like, Ellie, listen. And so it's really funny.
It makes a difference. It makes a difference.
It's crazy your instinct. And I listen differently, but she's unfiltered, right? Unfiltered Ellie. And so literally as the cellist kind of crawled on the stage, Ellie was like, and her ears turned off. But the violinist who walked on and looked like she was like Queen, Ellie was like, oh, like, so it's interesting. That was a very, very interesting moment, because I realized how much that first like impression, like when we turn on the
talk
camera.
about that. They were talking about, I'm a huge tennis fan, and I draw parallels. I draw parallels in tennis and music, and I talk about tennis in my teaching all the time. And they were watching something the other day, and they were talking about this very thing. You have to believe when you walk on that court or when you walk on that stage that you are going to kick so much ass that it's oozing out of you, that literally anybody in the audience would be like, that person's got this. And the other thing is, I remember an old, there was a very famous violin teacher called Dorothy DeLay, who sort of taught for 40 years of violinists through at Juilliard. And one of her advice, one of her things that she always offered to students going into competitions is wear something memorable, because everybody comes on wearing black. And if you wear a green dress, so it's things like this, how you walk, what you wear.
That's interesting.
Where it seems superficial, but it contributes to the whole package, which I think is ultimately what we're, as listeners, respond to the most, right? It's the whole package. It's the person that looks like they know what they're doing, dresses like they know what they're doing, and then sounds like they know what they're doing. How often do you, where you listen to somebody play and you say, oh, if they only didn't hunch, or if they only, wore a belt or pulled up their pants, or, and these are all things actually that for this age group is wonderful to start to become aware of, because also it's very rare that it's discussed in the lessons, unfortunately, because lessons are usually 1 hour per week. You've got repertoire that you need to bang through. You don't have time to talk about how's your posture, or how's your wardrobe. Do you need me to take you to go shopping? Should we, do like the sort of kind of the sprinkles on the cupcake, so to speak. But to be able to, let's say, have this kind of discussion, and for students to be aware of it already. I mean, if somebody told me this stuff when I was 13, 14, 15 years old, when I was going to do like local youth competitions, it would have been immensely helpful. I just kind of went in there, and you just thought, well, if I don't have a memory slip, maybe I'll win. But there's so much more to it than that. And now the standard is so high, everybody can play so well, that it's about, I mean, it really is. I mean, I just sat through 21 corn golds at Juilliard the other day, preliminary round, 21. And I remember a girl that wore a green dress, see? But it all becomes a blur, right? So but if you remember certain certain things like this, and when Ellie, your daughter, says something in an unfiltered way, that's actually what we're all thinking on the inside. We're just too scared to say it. So
she says,
but yeah. So, but it's good to have this dialogue. It's good for students to have this information, not be scared to ask questions about it, and to have it be part of their complete education in music. So
I also like what you said about the teacher, like, not happening in the lessons. I try I do try to, address it if they're going to like a bigger competition, like the one Ellie went to in North Carolina, or if I've had some students in Cooper competition or Stolberg, that
Right,
size
right.
of competition.
Exactly. Yeah,
But
yeah.
this is a good chance to sort of experiment with that. And Ellie's teacher, Hans Jensen, said he wasn't teaching when she went to North Carolina, but he called her. He did a FaceTime call in North Carolina the morning she was going to perform. And he's
good.
really funny, and sometimes he got right up in the camera and he pointed his finger and he said, "You're the best. No one's better than you." And she was like, ah, and he was like, "Nope, you're the best. You probably won't win, but it doesn't matter because you're the best." And then she was like, okay. And after it was over, she was like, "Well, I didn't win, but Hans said I'm the best." So I think and he's very convincing, and she's 11, but the whole thing was like very, very the confidence that he showed in her went a really long way. Like, we're still feeling the confidence from that one, like, "You're the best" yelling. And so that confidence, I hope that I'm, giving that to my students when they need it. I tried during their college auditions and things, but that's something that during this competition, I think would be really wonderful if all of the entrants could feel that, could experiment with feeling confident and knowing that's something we're looking for, that we would love to see you be your authentic, confident self. And then maybe, we'll address that in our comments and things. And that goes a really long way with your performing and your presence. I think that would be something.
Well, it's a much more, I like, John, what you said, which is, think of it more as a festival rather than a competition.
Yeah.
It's like I always tell people I love playing second violin and string quartets because I'm in there, It's like second fiddle and viola always, who cares first violin, second violin? I like to be inside, I like to be in the guts of the group. And it's the same idea, it's not first prize, second prize. It's a festival kind of to elevate everyone's standard of playing and everyone's sort of standard of kind of preparation. Because I think that sports, going back to sports, like, what do coaches do in the locker room at halftime when the team is losing? They just yell at them and say, "You're the best. Now get it together."
Pep
Right?
talk.
That's all. X's and O's is all nonsense. It's really, that's why, when I see somebody like, Nadal, or Djokovic, vaccination business in Australia aside, when he can close a match in the fifth set at like almost 1:00 in the morning in the US Open, is because he knows that he's been there before and he can close it and he believes he can do it. It's not because he can hit the ball better than somebody else. They both can hit the ball just fine. It's about going into that seventh gear in your head. And kids who can start to incorporate that into their preparation, whether it's doing a competition like this or entering or festival, however you want to brand it or call it, whatever, is something that you cannot teach and replicate in the practice room or in your teacher's studio. And I think that's very, very important to note, is that, and that's something that I feel so many students, both in, 11 to 18 and 18 and up, have been shortchanged these last 2 years with COVID, is they haven't had that opportunity to play and to discover what happens within themselves, even if just one or two people is out there. Because the minute you have to turn that on is different than if you're just like recording a video for Instagram. It's not the same. And recording videos for Instagram is important, but the next level of, and the performers that we all admire and love, they know how to do that in front of thousands of people. And it's that awareness that gets you from here to there, I think.
Yeah, I think these are all really, really wonderful points. And something else I'm also thinking about is like the anxiety aspect that a lot of us face as we're performing. And I think that's a really tricky thing for people to figure out how to overcome. So what do you think is like the best way for someone to start navigating that and their performing?
Well, just to bounce off of what Giora just was talking about, I think, you know, when we had this big gap because of COVID and everything, I myself, you know, can say that there was a period of, I don't know exactly how many months, but it was a significant number of months, maybe 4, 6, 7 months where I wasn't on any stage. I wasn't playing in front of any real person. And the first time I got back on stage, it was noticeable. I mean, the feeling that I was experiencing, and it's definitely a muscle that you have to continue to flex consistently. And so I think the best thing, you know, people ask me, a lot of young cellists ask me, like, what do you do before an audition? Or, you know, because there are a lot of people preparing for college auditions this time of year, and it's, you know, what sort of things, what tips can you give me? I say the best thing you can do is to do the audition as many times as possible before the actual audition, and for as many people as possible, because each time you do that, you're going to learn something about your current state of preparation. You're going to learn something about yourself, how you respond under pressure and in the presence of other people. And just like Giora was saying, that doesn't happen when there's a video camera on the same way. I mean, maybe you'll get a little nervous if you know you're recording yourself, but you can always just hit delete and you can do it again and again until you get it just how you want it. When it's live, you don't have that delete button. You can't stop the recording, say, forget what you just heard. It's there, they've heard it, and it's done. So I would say, you know, create as many little mini performances as you can for, if it's just for your family. I know even right now, my parents are happy to listen to one movement a night before I play the Haydn D major concerto next week, and they're like, what movement we're going to hear next tomorrow night? And it's a great little just test to see how is it coming. Is this in good shape? What's working? What's not? Doing something like that.
The art of the run through. It's the art
exactly.
of the run through.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's invaluable. You know, I used to do that all the time in school. I'd be like, I'm buying a pie, pizza pie, and just come. When there's pizza, people come.
That's a great idea.
And I tell my students all the time, because I remember, I mean, when I remember before some key performances early on, and my parents are musicians, so I grew up in a house that understood the art and the power of the run through. My mother's a cellist and a pianist, all the time run throughs, all the time. And my mother plays a lot of contemporary music, run throughs nonstop for stuff that you don't even want to hear, pots and pans, it sounds like, but she'll do it. And she'll get the cheese and the crackers and the wine, and people come. She just did one, and now she's been doing it for people, like a lot of my family's in Israel. She hasn't seen them in a couple of years. She'll do it over Zoom, but live Zoom, to try to recreate that. So I grew up with that value of buy some food and have people come to the house, or use somebody else's house if your house is too small. You know, there are series that are based on that whole concept, like our friends in Memphis that you know, there's a lady there who's been doing it for 40 years, just hopping around people's houses, wine and cheese, and come and play. And people come.
Yeah.
People love it, you know? And that's you're right, John. It's very, very important that to hear, you know, have a glass of wine and listen to a movement a night or something. And they don't even have to know what they're hearing, but it gets you nervous in a different way. It gets you nervous in a different way when they sit down and they're there, and it's not a camera. It's another human being. And especially, actually, what I find is if it's a human being that you know, it actually gets you more nervous. We all get more nervous when we play in cities where we know somebody there. You know, like in Dubuque, I don't care. I don't know anybody in Dubuque. I mean, I hope you don't, but I don't know anybody there. So when I go to Dubuque, oh man, it's a breeze. But when I play in New York, woo, you know, it's because you know people. So right there, that tells you how to deal. And the more you do it earlier, don't wait till the last minute. Liz, you probably know all about this with your last minute kids. Kids wait till the last minute, always.
I don't let them.
And you don't let them.
I'm very controlling.
Good. So we should talk about that. Don't wait till the last minute.
I have like three really fast things. And Giora and John-Henry and I should probably start a podcast, and we just like chat.
I'm into it.
Okay.
Yeah, we got time.
There we go. I'll start thinking of names.
We'll just like blather, because Michelle is like, okay. So number one, this is what I do when my students are doing college auditions. I hire actors, and they come into my home, where they used to go to MSM before. And I used to get a bigger room at MSM with a stage, and it's messed up now. But anyway, and I would hire actors, and I would tell them the part they're playing. You're playing the judge who doesn't really care. So you just sit there and you're just like this. That's it. You're playing the judge who writes a lot and is like listening to every single note and taking so many notes that you're like, what the heck are you writing? And you're playing the judge who like stands up in the middle and like walks around the room. And then I put them in a room, and I tell my students in the hallway blatant lies. I tell them, this one is Perlman's assistant, the middle one is visiting from NEC, and the other one teaches at CIM. And they're like, and I'm like, in you go. And then they're like horrified. I give them 15 minutes only to warm up, and then I send them in one after another. Then I video them, and then we watch it back. And then I say, look there, you look like this. Ah! And they're like, well, because those people are watching. And I'm like, it doesn't matter what people are watching. And then I tell them, those are actors. They know nothing about the violin. They've never even seen it. And they're like, what are they writing? And I'm like tic-tac-toe. And then they're like, and then I send them in again. And then we compare the videos.
Very creative.
Wow.
I'm insane. So
that could be a whole TV series.
You really should. You need to start a reality show.
Well, that has been suggested by many people due to my incidences that I live on a daily basis. So I do that. And then when Ellie was gearing up for North Carolina, I think I told John-Henry, I hired 6 sets of 3 people each, and they came in shifts. And
where do you find these people? What do you call central
jokes
casting?
I can't say now. So some of those were cellists. They're mostly actors. I get off because actors will do anything for $50. Sorry,
That's true, but
that was terrible. I take that back. I'm going to be canceled. Sometimes actors or other people need money, and so they will come, and I pay them well, and I respect them, and they come in my home, and I set up this is my living. This is my living room. It's a little different. There's my piano, and then my living room is kind of quite large for New York City. They come in, and Ellie sits here. I don't tell her who the people are. She performs everything straight through. She goes in her room. She thinks about what went wrong. I go talk to her. I let them out. The next group comes in. The pianist just sits here, and then we talk about, so that.
That's amazing.
So that's what I did for Ellie in her last, because it was her first big one. I mean, that was like, it had, rounds, and she was the youngest and all these. Then for my students who are going to college, I want to do it so that they get the sense of walking in and out of a room, being stopped and started, because that's very hard to play Sibelius and then say, stop, play Bach G minor Adagio. And you're like, so I wanted them to do that. I wanted them to have the weird judge who's like, I'd like to hear your 20th century piece or whatever, and they have to start this piece. So I wanted them to have that, and they always have a pianist, always. So because that's usually how it is. If they don't have a pianist, then for a specific audition it goes out. So that's one thing I do that any teacher can put together. If you have, I just put things out on Facebook or Instagram that's like, hey, anyone in New York or on Facebook, and then people, then they connect to their friends. So you could say like let's say I hire a girl named Victoria. This is what happened for one of the, I said, do you have 5 friends? I'll give everyone $50 to come over at my house in these intervals and do nothing. And she was like, yep.
Listen, if I didn't have kids, I would do it.
I know, but see, one thing is I didn't really
I'll come and sit and listen for $50.
Okay, Giora, that's.
But I got my hands full right now, so.
I'm not even looking for the fee. I'm looking for what John-Henry was talking about, which is them in their heads. And also then they get to watch it back and be like,
That's right.
why was I so nervous?
That's right.
And so then I said, when you go to audition at NEC, you're going to think these are all actors and Elizabeth is nuts, because as far as you know, I've hired people and put them in NEC because I can do that. And they're like, so that is one thing. And then the other thing I was going to say, so those are really great experiences. And my studio also, we perform all the time, and I'm always putting them in very uncomfortable situations so that they kind of learn how to be uncomfortable. Giora and actually, it's interesting because the two of you grew up in extraordinarily musical homes with these musical parents who were already aware, and now I'm seeing it from the other way around, right? Because my Ellie is doing that, but I didn't. So for her, she plays with a pianist 3 to 4 times a week. And that's something that I think has helped her development quite a lot. And like when John-Henry comes over, I'm always like, you want a pianist here? like the piano, I have like a circle of them and they come and whenever they can come basically, and they'll either work on, but she hears it all the time. Like she's very comfortable with piano. And she just put together a Boccherini sonata, brand new sonata with a piano. And it was just so easy. And she was just having so much fun because she's very, and that's one thing too, I think in my studio, I try to have them play with piano as much as possible because it's something is seen as like an extra expense to a lot of people, and like a lot of parents out there, they're like, we're already paying for this and this and this, but it's really important that the young kids get enough time. I've seen kids learn Mendelssohn on their own and then put it together with piano and try to go on a stage after playing it once. It's just not going to work. Twice isn't going to work. You've got to be comfortable or it adds to the anxiety.
You should go around and give this spiel to about every music school in the country.
I know.
Because especially university music schools,
I know,
will not pay to have a staff pianist for your studio.
So you know what I do? This is maybe not the best thing, but this is what I do because at MSM we have that problem. So what I do, and
What's
also
the problem at MSM too?
So what I do is, well, I wouldn't say that's the problem. The problem is something ruder that I probably can't say here, but I will just say this. Sometimes the pianists have not played the repertoire so much, and so I am not teaching it to them. I'll leave it there.
Yeah,
so
fair enough.
So and I can't deal, I don't have time. Sorry. You come in.
But it's like you said though, the idea, I remember when I was teaching at Cincinnati, I taught at Cincinnati for 3 years. When I got there, I already knew a wonderful pianist that played for the opera. So I was like, I got the job. I'm going to get a studio pianist. It's all fixed, right? So in my first meeting with the whatevers, I say, okay, this is all set, and I have a pianist for my studio. They're like, oh, wow, you just got here. You found a pianist. And I said, yeah, so how can we make sure that, she's in the system and gets paid and everything? And you know what they said to me? They said, this isn't Juilliard.
Yeah.
And I said, oh. And then I did more research, and there's more and more places like that. Indiana, you have to pay for your own pianist. There's a bunch of places.
Right. So this is what I do.
Anyway,
so
we've
digressed, but basically basically what I have my students do, which is what you're talking about, is when they come to me at MSM, I say, I find the pianist situation here to be not conducive to my learning environment. So you will have to blah, 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 and I have them sign, and then they pay my pianist individually. Now that's not appropriate for everyone, and it is a big problem, but that's how I get around it. My last tip really quickly, because I'm sure Michelle wants to get back. We can come back to this on our first edition of our podcast called 3 People Talking Nonstop. Okay. My other tip is this, which I always tell all my students. I don't think they believe me, but this is so true. when you do an audition or a competition like Radda, who you are and where you are when you audition is who we see. So that alone should cut the anxiety, because you can't make yourself magically different even in a 3-month span of time. You can make small adjustments. You can do this, or this. You could change your environment. You can get a better pianist. You can make it more in tune, but you can't drastically change who you are. So I always tell my students auditioning, they're going to see you for who you are. So just let them see that. And then it goes from there, because there's nothing you shouldn't be nervous in that moment. Nobody cares about a slip. Nobody cares if you're playing along and all of a sudden one note in the is high in the run on the page 2 of the Sibelius. It doesn't matter. Move on, because that's not what they're listening for or looking at. They're looking at you, and they can actually see all the way through you when you tune, when you do anything. So as soon as you started playing, that's you. So you can't change that. So relax. Just show them who you are in a relaxed and comfortable, confident way, and then you will be assessed properly. So instead of getting yourself hyped up and anxious, where you actually might trip or make more mistakes or affect your sound, which is, the first thing that goes sometimes, just be your authentic self and know that there's literally nothing you can do to be that much better or that much worse. You can't affect the curve that much. It's impossible. You are who you are. So instead of being so stressed out, just try to be relaxed and not anxious, and know that the panel is going to see you for who you are, and there's nothing you can do about it. So just accept it, be proud, and go for it. That's what, I don't know if they believe me, but it's true, right? I mean, you're not going to change yourself like radically, like, the day before, it's like,
no, that's very good. That's very good advice.
They're going to see you. We know who you are as a player right away. And so I've listened to zillions of auditions for various things. We're going to see right through you and know who you are. So we just don't be stressed, because that just distracts us. We would just rather you be relaxed and proud and show us who you are. And then we can get to the core of you, whoever you are. And then that helps us as people who are wanting you to do well. So
Michelle, you should cut this recorded broadcast just for this bit that she said and put that on your homepage. Period. The end.
Thanks, Giora.
I'm not kidding, because that's the marketing.
Yeah.
That's the marketing right there. You talk about, that's really, for me.
Well, and it's really true. I need to do a survey and see if any of my students ever believe me, because they're always like, but it's really like, there's really, if I go and get my violin right now and then you give me 2 hours to practice, it's gonna be the same. You know what I mean?
No, I'll tell you something. I remember having a conversation with somebody, English gentleman, who's been on a lot of juries in major international competitions. And I was picking his brain just to have data. I'm always interested, and I talk to people in the New York Philharmonic about this a lot. I want to know, what do you guys look for in 180 applicants for one stupid chair of tutti violin? I want to know. Just like I want to know what you're looking for that will give you gold in, the Queen Elizabeth competition, or whatever it is, Nielsen, Tchaikovsky, anyway. And he says, one of the things that we notice immediately, apropos of what you were just saying, Liz, is that when somebody comes out and is trying to channel someone else, meaning like he says, one of the biggest problems we see is somebody coming out and trying to play like X rather than being themselves. And that is not something like in a figure skating competition when they dock 1/10 of a point because the triple salchow didn't land exactly as it should. That's like a tangible thing, right? Something like this is very kind of abstract. You're like, well, you're channeling Hillary Hahn today, but you don't look like Hillary Hahn, but you're doing mannerisms that are as such. and it's actually hurting your performance, even though you think that it's helping you. And the judges see right through that. And that's going to hurt your marks because you're not being your true authentic self. And that was the most useful information from an international juror that I have ever heard, because I share that with many of the people that I work with that are contemplating going into competitions and kind of struggling, or, you know, it's like, should I be channeling, you know, Josh or Gil or Yo-Yo or, you know, Elisa, or, you know, you rattle off the names of any instrument, you know, should I, anybody who's up there on that pedestal out there doing it. Sometimes young people think, well, I should do what they do, and that'll get me the keys to the castle. That'll get me to the promised land. And what they don't realize is exactly that the reason why they did get the keys to the promised land is because they're original. There's nobody else like them.
And all the kids have this in them.
Yes.
And that's what's really special. And I get a compliment. Well, I don't know if it's meant as a compliment, but I get a comment all the time because I have a big Instagram presence, right? And I get so many comments and direct messages. And a lot of them say, it's interesting, your students don't sound alike.
Right, and that's the best compliment you can
right?
get.
And I'm like, yes, I'm so glad. There's one teacher whom I very much admire at a big school in New York City, and her students, I think, are maybe the best in the city. And I've judged 2 competitions, and I always pick one of her students. They're literally amazing, but they're like a cookie cutter. It's like literally I can tell you who the teacher is. And so although they're fantastic, I'm like, I really want my students to all have their own sound. And I will say one other quick thing. Sorry, Michelle. Okay. Also, I might have to go plug it in my kitchen. Giora, this is something I've never told you, but sometimes when my students are missing a certain joy or like finding their own sound or starting to really listen. They don't listen, for like a really long time. So they're like 16 years old and they're finally listening. I will tell them to listen to 3 people play the barber. And it's the Barber Violin Concerto is a very interesting one because it's not all splash. And the first page especially, the first 3 minutes are just kind of gorgeous joyfulness and with moments of sadness. And so I asked them to listen to Giora play with Perlman and then 2 others of their choosing. And then so they listen to whoever. Okay, and everyone's wonderful, but I say, what's different about Giora? And every single one of them for about 12 years says Giora is so joyful, or he's so happy, or he loves this piece. That's the comeback. And I'm like, right.
Wow. That warms my heart because
I never told you that for 12 years. We should talk more. We'll do this on our podcast.
We should. I mean, because
literally,
when I'm down, I'm going to call you for a little fluff up.
I'm telling you, a lot. When a lot of the views on that barber are like my studio, because I'm like,
that's fine.
Like, it's required listening. I'm like, if they're having like I'm like, listen to this piece and tell me what you see. And it's a great recording because if you do have it, like go straight up on his face, you can see.
No, it's good. I mean, it's baby Giora.
It's baby Giora, but it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
and I
know,
say,
but it's funny
voice.
Because I really that element in playing of joy and sharing beauty of sound and carrying through some kind of message of just beauty.
That's kind of hard to find, I'll tell you.
It is hard to find, and it's funny because I talk about this with my kids all the time, where I'm like, you're going through and doing all these things, but I don't feel what you actually feel about the piece. Because I know that if you play there's no way
I love that
music.
recording of yours. I would give anything to have ever had a performance like that. That was John Henry. I'll watch yours, I promise. Now I'm into cello. I've been watching Giora for years, but like I would love.
I've seen that same recording. I remember watching that recording with friends probably 10 years ago.
Recording is like
with Israel
yes?
Philharmonic, is that right?
It's with Israel
Yep.
Philharmonic, and it's the same value system. I've had that all the way through, and I try to share that with my students. And the thing is, you bring up an interesting thing, which is that the listening process and what you actually hear coming out of your cello or of your violin, of your piano, whatever instrument you play. It's so complicated and nuanced, yet it's so simple at the same time, right? It's like, can you sound the way you feel about this piece of music? Because if you ask anybody who's playing a piece, do you love this piece? Most of the time, the answer is yes, right? Most of the time, they're like, I really love this piece, but it doesn't sound that way. Why? And so to try to sort of figure that out, and I think, again, going back to the competition, rather than turning this into some kind of broad podcast on an XM radio station near you, is I think the feedback component. Because if I think back to things that I did that I wish I got, was feedback. I never got feedback. I tried to get feedback from managers. I tried to get feedback from conductors. I tried to get feedback from the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. I tried to get feedback from, you name it. Like, I remember when I auditioned for CMS2 and I didn't get in. And I thought, and they said, for those of you who didn't get selected, we'll be offering you feedback. And I said, aha, at least I can maybe know what the F happened. Never got the feedback. It was not real. Yeah. And I followed up like a good boy. I wrote to the administrator and I was like, hey, just checking in. Remember that feedback that they said they would send us losers? And we never got it. And that's why when Michelle, when you said, the part of the mission of this operation is to not just give students an opportunity and a platform, but to also actually connect with people who have been around in the industry, who can offer some constructive feedback in return for their participation. That really struck a chord with me, because I have so many times where I remember going and playing with some orchestra and thinking it went really well. And I thought, that's a re-engagement in the bag. We even talked about future pieces, and when you go to a dinner after a concert and they say, name your top 5 concerti, and you rattle them off, and they're like, okay, that sounds really good. Let's do it in 2 years from now. And then nothing happens. You wonder, why not? So then you go and you ask your manager or a conductor, whoever, so can you tell me what happened there? They're like, well, we don't know. I don't know. It's just the business. And that's the business. The business sucks sometimes. And so what's nice about doing something like this is to try to give kids information, because that's how they improve, not just as musicians, but as people. Because if nobody tells you that you're a jerk, you're going to still be a jerk. Somebody has to tell you, That's why you go to therapy, because the therapist tells you stop doing that, and so for me, feedback is huge. I remember I've done 2 international competitions in my life, and the feedback that I got from those jurors that stung the most actually ended up being the most useful in the end. It burned me when I heard it in the reception room afterwards, but I took the most to heart from those comments. And so I think that being able to provide that for the next generation in a constructive, safe way is, I think, can be a wonderful cornerstone of this mission that Radda is trying to achieve, in that so often you do competitions and you hear either you don't get any feedback or the feedback that you get is kind of generic, right? But if
Yeah.
what Liz was saying, for instance, in the last competition, you actually took the time to put together video to offer your feedback for each and every contestant, you're not going to get that at some, other thing. That's tremendous. And if the students can really listen to that, that's as good as anything that you're going to get in your teacher studio.
It's really interesting you mentioning the CMS 2 story, because I have a similar one, and it's funny because especially when you're working with larger organizations, not to put any specific ones down, but it's true because part of it's just the nature of the space, because you'll probably have dozens, if not sometimes hundreds of people applying for these things, and then to get feedback for each person, it's a big undertaking. And so in the case of something like CMS2 or, whatever other organization, the feedback you get is either sort of secondhand. In other words, they'll take a collection of the notes, and then someone will actually distill it down into their own writing. It's kind of paraphrased and it's kind of weakened. And so I think that's one of the nice things about actually meeting someone in person if you go to a competition, or getting a personalized video, is you're hearing it from the horse's mouth. It's not someone else saying, well, yeah, they wrote this word that looks like, sometimes it's also hard to just read their handwriting. I was actually on the phone with someone a few months ago for an audition I did not too long ago, and they're saying, I can't tell if they're saying happy or it was something they couldn't tell,
or sappy
or sappy. Yeah, it's like it couldn't tell if it was a positive or negative. And
or
so,
negative, right
exactly. So and also, again, sometimes you have to bother these people for weeks and months. It was, for me, what I did get from CMS2 was it was like 3 months later, and it was like 8 bullet points that were typed by, probably from something that was written from a collection of judges. So again, that's going to be, I think, one of the advantages of something like Radda.
Yeah, I'm loving the direction.
Yeah, and
but I do want to try to address one more thing, because of the we just added it to this competition this time around, websites and branding training sessions. So I just wanted to get into the importance of, we talked a lot about the performance side of being a musician, but there's also the business side too, if you decide to pursue that later on. So I'd love to talk about that a little bit more.
I'll go first, simply because my internet is I switched rooms and my computer is really angry. Am I clear, Michelle?
Yeah, I put the second in the waiting room.
Okay. If it glitches, just wave me and I'll be quiet. I'll just say it very quick. So I have had wonderful success on Instagram as a teacher, and as from a different point of view, I've had wonderful success with Ellie's Instagram, which is a little bit controversial because she is a child, but I sort of started her account as a practice account, and there were only friends following, and it was no big deal, and she was 9, and it was just playing a scale, and then more and more people came, and now she has 50,000 people. And sometimes we'll do practices on Instagram if she's feeling good and in a good mood, and I'm in a good mood. So those two things are rare and they happen at the same time. But if we're all happy, we'll turn on Instagram Live, and it is crazy, but we will have 2,000 to 3,000 people watching her practice slowly with the metronome. And then they'll ask her all kinds of questions. Why do you practice slowly? Why are you, it's really good, go ahead and play it. Or why did you post a video that was sort of out of tune? You're too good for that. And then we have to tell them it's all the process. We show all of it. We show the whole process here. We're not editing it out just because she was out of tune. She just learned the Baccarini. It took her 3 days. You saw day 1, day 2, day 3. So that's been really interesting. And from her Instagram, she's gotten lots and lots of attention. And that's not probably why most people do it, but as far as building a brand, she already has quite a niche, as John-Henry knows very well. And her teacher's always like, Hans is like, another orchestra? And I'm like, we're going to Australia. So she's, if you set it up right for your child and your child is into it, that your young teenager, it's a really great way to sort of start getting them out there and sharing it. And Ellie likes to give advice, so she'll have tons of little cellists email her, say, I just started Twinkle, and then Ellie will send them back a little video. She gets asked to play Happy Birthday and say happy birthday to her fans. And so she loves to do that. She loves doing questions about how she balances her life and why hard work is worth it. So these kind of things involve her directly, and she feels really good about it. So it's very positive for us. It says I'm unstable. For me, developing a brand came very easily. John-Henry and Giora know me very well. And Michelle, you know me. I'm a little bit of a personality. I know, everyone's shocked. And so the Instagram or the whatever, I mainly use Instagram, and my website, everything very developed, my YouTube channel. It kind of just sort of, I just started when Instagram became a thing, or when a student told me and I started to do it. That's how it usually happens. The students are like, Elizabeth, why aren't you on this? Delete TikTok off my phone because he said it was not good for me, and deleted it off. My students are always looking out for me. So anyway, one of them told me about Instagram, and a couple 3 years ago or something, and then I just started posting teaching video after teaching video that my students performing, lesson excerpts, just everything, and I put it out there, and then that sort of established my brand very, very quickly. And I also, I'm not so great with the comments. Sometimes my assistant goes on it and she answers them, but I'm good at the DMs. Like, I'll keep up with the DMs and I'll answer it myself. And I get lots of people who send me like, what's wrong with my bow hand? Or am I holding the violin? I have like 5, am I holding the violin wrongs waiting for me for later today. And then, so that's been really fun. And then I became kind of obsessed with, with making videos and of like pedagogy videos. This all happened during the pandemic. And so during that time too, what I branched out is on this thing. I don't know, do you guys know of Patreon, this thing? Okay, so Patreon has been great because I just started it randomly as a place to hold all my videos, because I have like, I think there's like almost 200 teaching videos of just me like teaching the bow hand. And it's all on Patreon. And so people can now go, it's not for the money, but people can go and sign up, and then they can see everything I have. They can see like how I make practice versions of things. John-Henry has seen these, how I make like little notes, or I chop up music physically onto different sheets. There's different rounds you go through with the music. They see all of my ways. I've put my entire repertoire list up, which is my guided repertoire for violin teachers. That's up there. So I sort of like put everything on my Patreon. So people from Instagram, if they're like, I want to know more about teaching, I'm like, go look at this, see what you like here. You can sign up and go off. And so I really love helping people. And I love that the information is so available. We're not like, one time someone said like, don't tell everyone your secrets. And I'm like, there are secrets for everyone. Everyone needs to know how to explain the bow hand better. Like, everyone needs to. So if it helps even like one teacher help one student, that's great. So go and take the information and use it. So my brand, I don't know how you would describe it, but it developed very fast, and it's done nothing but been wonderful. Last summer, I did a 10-hour masterclass day where it was July 10th. I had a big sign up. I only advertised on Instagram, only, that was it. And I was like, who wants to come? I had like maybe 630 people come. and all over the world. There were 31 countries, and they came or they got a recording, and it was on Zoom, and I auditioned kids. I chose kids for each masterclass depending on what I wanted to teach. So I had a beginner one, a middle one, an advanced one, and then a anything. And like literally just from Instagram. And it was amazing. So I had people there who they didn't speak English. They had translators. It was literally all over the world. It was wonderful. So I would say that's my brand, whatever that is. And the way I got there is by making sure that everything I put out is exactly how I want it, and sharing of myself pretty freely. I'm answering everything myself most of the time. And I engage with people and really enjoy it. So that's my brand, I guess.
Just real quick to sort of show the other side of the coin. I am personality-wise, I'm the opposite. I've always been social media averse, and so it's interesting because both approaches can work. It can work for whoever you are, but I had to force myself really to get on social media and start posting things. And I know Giora, I know you have a lot more experience probably with Facebook, because I know you have a huge Facebook presence, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. But just with Instagram, I wasn't on Instagram at all. And then I think it was like as a New Year's resolution, it was kind of part dare, part New Year's resolution, but I was like, okay, I just need to force myself to do this because it's an important component, I think, of being a musician nowadays. If you're the best saxophone player in the world, but nobody knows you or knows who you are, it's not going to be a very fun time. And so someone who's half as good as you, who posts videos all the time and is having some kind of presence, is going to be having a little more opportunity. So anyways, I started doing videos daily. And at first it was like, I had this challenge of trying to do X number. And there's this big popular thing which it's a little cliche now, but the whole 100 days of practice, which everybody has done. And it really, it has morphed the platform for better or worse. And some people love it, some people don't, into this super saturated platform of videos, particularly practice videos. And whether you like it or not, that's just kind of the way that it is now, and that it has been. But there's some really great advantages, and they're twofold. The first is the point that Elizabeth first said, which is that you actually there's a process and it's a journey, and there's going to be times where you put out something that someone criticizes or that you're maybe not even happy with, but it's important to document the process and to show that we're all human. We're not these perfect machines that never make mistakes. And showing the process, it shows our humanity, it shows our vulnerability, and it shows that we're in the same boat as everyone else, and that this isn't some cherry-coated, peachy, sunny, always perfection place. But the second one is that you, as a byproduct of that, and being open and sharing and being transparent, you get honest reactions, and you get honest fans, people who are wanting to know more of what you're doing. There's this one video I put out on YouTube, and it's like 2 hours of me just practicing. And I got the idea because I saw this kind of study with me account, and it's fascinating because there are these people who they'll go on YouTube and they just have dozens, maybe hundreds of videos of them studying in silence. And they open up their book, you see them typing, and it's probably a little bit of a relaxing component, which is why it's so popular. But people like to see other people's processes, and they like to know how does this person approach this. And so one day I see like the views on the watch time on this video just shoots up like 8 hours. And so it's like either 4 people watched the whole thing, or somebody watched it 4 times in a row. But people like to see what you do, and they like to see how you approach things. And so as a byproduct, you're going to get people who are interested and people who stick around and watch, and your account can grow. So there many, I think, benefits to doing that. But you do, if it doesn't come naturally to you, or if you feel like there's this kind of resistance, it sometimes is helpful to have a little challenge or a day, let's say for 30 days in a row, I'm going to post something, or for 2 months, I'm going to try to just do something every day or 5 times a week, but just have a little bit of a deadline or something poking you so that you're forcing yourself to do it. And I'm so glad that I did in retrospect, because I gained confidence from doing it, and I don't feel as weird about doing it anymore.
I think that the importance now is probably as part of your complete package as a musician. I think social is right at the top, because I think that what has changed, and I'm maybe, Liz and I might be of that sort of last generation that still remember what it was like, where you actually had to build an audience from going to the hall and playing on stage. Now it's the other way around. Now people want to get to know you in your hoodie and sweats before they even consider buying a ticket at the hall to come and see you. And it's kind of, Hollywood is kind of like that. You're like, oh, if it's a movie with Tom Hanks, I'm going to go see it because I love Tom. I don't know him, but I like him. I think I like him, so I'm going to go, And I think now for us, it's the same, where it's like if we see certain people, like there's a pianist called Igor Levit, and he's now playing for the first time live since pandemic. But every review that they're writing about him now is because he was broadcasting live on Twitter every day between March and May, right? He was doing everyday live recitals from his house in Berlin. And so people got to know him that way. So it's a great way, if you're like writing a review for his Carnegie recital, you may know this guy because he was on Twitter broadcasting every day from his apartment in Berlin during pandemic. So right there, it tells you that you're getting to know this artist flipped around. Rather than having to get dressed and go to the hall, you can get to know these people, kind of like what Food Network has done for chefs, right? Like chefs now are celebrities, and then you want to go to their restaurants. You used to have to go to the restaurant to figure out who was cooking it to then know if you like the dish. Now you're like, oh, wait, that's the person that does that dish. Now I'm going to go seek out their restaurant. So I think that in a great way has sort of turned the tables. But the most important thing for me is that you have to be yourself. Believe it or not, one of the things that students say to me all the time, especially boys, I find, they say, I want to be the next Ray Chen on Instagram, like all the time. And you know what my answer is? My answer is, you know why Ray Chen on Instagram? Because he's Ray Chen. He's being himself. He's not trying to be somebody else, I think. And one of the things that got me some traction on Facebook early on, I was on Facebook in 2009. I have almost 75,000 followers, which is, it's a decent amount, but it's been building for over 10 years, because my wife was like, wow, you're one of the few musicians that actually speaks in complete sentences. You should do some videos out there and say hello to your people. And I'm like, what are you talking about? My wife is not a musician. And she said, I've met some of your people at festivals. You guys don't know how to talk. You speak like you actually have a decent education. You should be on camera. So I just started talking about what I know, which is how to try to make a good sound and play in tune. That's the first thing. I was like, that much I know how to do, I think. And then the floodgates opened, because nobody was talking about that stuff, especially in 2009. Nobody was talking about it. But I was always myself, and then people would give me different comments and feedbacks and things like that about, like, next time you should do a video without your ceiling fan turning in the top because it's distracting, stuff like that. But I think that getting stressed about trying to develop a brand is not the point, I think. I think that what we should focus on as young developing artists and musicians and people is, and again, sort of going back to what the slogan video should be for this whole competition that Liz was saying, is to be your true, honest self and give people a window into the process. A person who's doing it really, really well right now, but who is not really technically slick, is Hillary Hahn. Hillary Hahn is putting her iPhone in the worst possible angle, wrong way, up her nostrils, barely brushed her teeth, the hair is all a mess, and it gets like 150,000 views in like 10 hours because people want to see how what her end result is, which is freaking perfection, how it starts. So people want, like what John was saying, which is that people want to see the process. People are all voyeurs. Everybody wants to see what their neighbors are doing. That's the beauty of living in New York City. I can see what my neighbors are doing right over there on 21st Street. They don't close the blinds, you know. But everybody wants to see, and when everybody's home and it's cold and it's COVID, people really want to see. But really what I tell students is what makes you tick. What makes you happy that you want to share with people? Don't do it because you want to try to be like John-Henry and the way he does it. Or don't figure out the camera angle that works for you. Figure out, maybe you want to do it all in black and white because you don't like the way you look when it's color. Fine, change it. Maybe you don't want to show your face because you don't want to deal with it. So just show your fingers. There's a violinist who has a very, very big traction called Kirsten Leon, who's terrific talent. For a while, he was just showing his fingers all the time. Brilliant, because you don't have to worry about doing your hair. It's fantastic. So, things like that. Like there are times where myself, honestly, I want to do a video, but I'm like, I got to get it together. I look like crap. Forget it. I'll do it another day.
I just don't even care.
No, I know. I care.
My videos are
for a while. I thought about changing my account to the headless cellist because I would only post like from the next.
I know you only posted right, but see, your angle was fantastic. You did it kind of like a GoPro kind of perspective, but it was original. You see, and eventually everybody's gonna take ideas from everybody else, and that's fine because we all see what each other's doing, and that's okay. But I think that
want to buy pajamas to match Ellie because every day she practices in pajamas.
So you're sitting on a gold mine.
I'm not
kidding. I don't know what you're doing teaching.
You gotta get the merch line.
Take this girl to the
clothing line.
Merch and
Ellie,
shut it down.
It's fascinating because we just don't censor anything. Like you're like Ellie's wearing a onesie and she's practicing Bach and she looks all into it, but she's wearing a Stitch onesie, which is her most famous.
You could start selling those pajamas. I know people who will then go and DM me for today's outfit after like the try-on hauls and all these different things. And then that goes straight into your Venmo, girlfriend. I mean, it's all possible. You just have to go there. But I think
it's just what you're talking about, though. It's funny because people always comment like, so cute. Like your Lalo's amazing and you're wearing pajamas.
Right. But you're being authentic. Yeah, but you're being authentic, you're being real. You just that's I think that's really the essence of it. Is I think that you need to, and it's like John said, if you're adverse to it, sometimes you need to do something that makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable to grow. And so if you're really one of those people that's super introverted and doesn't want to share and doesn't want to do, and I think that, just another side note, which and then we can stop, but I've used it as motivating tool for students to practice more. Now, what do I mean by that? Is I had one student who really, and he was a doctoral student. This kid did not practice, and I'm like, unless you want to be in school for the next 15 years, it would be nice if you can get it together and wrap it up. And he wasn't wrapping it up. Like, I guess the parents had an open checkbook, and just he kept staying in school. So I was pulling every rabbit out of the hat, and I couldn't figure it out. And I said, look it, I need you to record at least 30 minutes of video every day of you practicing. I need to see those thumbnails in your camera roll. And at least 1 minute of each of those 7 rolls of camera need to be good enough that if I post it on Instagram, you won't be embarrassed. Boy, did he work. Now, of course, I wasn't going to pull it and post it on Instagram, but the idea that maybe I would, because if it's on Instagram, it's got to be good, right? You're not going to post
That's
something.
why mine works so hard, because I'm
High
always
stakes.
filming it.
You see? That's what I'm saying, because you're always filming it.
They see the
So-
phone come out and they're like, ah!
That's right. When the phone comes out and the red button goes, you're like, ooh, I got to get it together now, you know? And so at the very least, you know, when we couldn't have student performances and live performances and all these things, that kept people in shape. Because at least, you know, I would say to people, just hit the red button and send it, at the very least, send it to me. You know, it would keep people in shape. But sometimes I've used it as a threat, which is I need to go in there and be able to post something on Instagram and for you to not be mortified. And all of a sudden, the playing goes up that week. So anyway.
All right. So like I said before, I'm loving the way the discussion's going, but we do have to wrap it up now. And thank you all again so much for being here today. And just as a reminder, if you guys want to compete in the competition and get feedback from these wonderful jurors and also from the reviewers before the judging round, you can head to our website, which is raddaconnect.com, and you'll be able to find the full guidelines, the competition application, and all of that. So thank you all again so much, and everybody have a great day.
Everyone
Thanks for having us.
enter, send your videos. We want to hear you. Don't be
Tune in
afraid.
for episode 2 when we get our act together on the podcast.
It's going to
Good luck,
happen.
everyone. Good luck, everyone. Thanks.
Yes, good luck.
Bye.
Good night.